Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany. I'm from Beijing, China. I go to a private university.
Hello everyone, this is Akshay. I'm from Mumbai, India. I go to a public university.
My name is Fatima, originally from Nigeria. I go to an HBCU, meaning historically Black colleges.
My name is Thi Nguyen, and I'm from Vietnam. I go to a community college.
I want to be able to influence the world, and United States stands out as a pace setter in research. I'm so excited about being here.
In my opinion, U.S. degree is extremely impressive, and that makes studying abroad in the U.S. an excellent choice.
There are many types of institutions in the United States.
I think it's just so unique that there's so many to choose from.
I had to make a major choice between the type of university that I was supposed to attend. The major factor that I considered was the scholarship opportunities that were available and the alumni network.
I've heard so much about the HBCUs as historically Black colleges. I chose those because I wanted a school that really represents me.
As a humanities student, I prefer seminars instead of lectures because I find myself better understand the material if we get to discuss it in class. That led into my decision of going to a private university.
I chose a community college to study because most of the community college offer affordable costs, and they often offer a lot of majors you can choose from.
Some of the things I find that are in common between different types of institutions in the U.S. is that the curriculum are more comprehensive.
It is more practical oriented that really helps you get hands-on experience about what you're learning.
Students can benefit from forward-thinking technology and modern facilities.
And I love the diversity, the fact that it's a melting pot for everywhere in the world. And so it's an awesome experience for me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our today's session. Welcome to January and welcome to 2025. We missed you guys, and we hope that you are excited for our upcoming webinars for January. So you already have seen our agenda for January. We will add more of them during this week. But today, we dedicated our webinar to credential evaluation. And first of all, I would just like to thank you once more for being with us, for growing our platforms, our social media platforms. We can see that there is a huge impact, and we can see that there is a huge engagement from you guys, and everything is because you are very interested and active in all the webinars that we are conducting. So just want to remind you that Education USA Virtual is here with useful webinars that can help you to discover the steps and the application process for your studies in the US, either that is going to be graduate or postgraduate. So if you guys are interested, or if you are guys seeking help for applying for a university in the United States, please select the region that you are currently locating, and there you'll find the advisor that will be happy and excited to help you in your path. And as I said, in January we have really interesting webinars that are dedicated specifically to the research process, because we know that during the research process you should consider a lot of things. things. And one of them would be the credential evaluation. Another one would be like the ranking, and the other one would be accreditation. So today we will concentrate on the credential evaluation, a topic that it's not really discussed in a lot of webinars, but we decided, and we have seen that many of you reached to us and asked for this topic specifically. So we have a special invitee. We have Thomas Merlot today with us. He's from the Northwest Missouri State University, and Thomas will help us to navigate through the process of researching the credential evaluation process, and what is that, and what do you guys would need to consider. Thomas, thank you so much for being with us today. And I'm so happy that we'd start specifically with this webinar and specifically with you. Thank you once again for participating.
Thank you, Alina. Good day, everyone. My name is Thomas Merlot. And before I jump too much into the presentation, I wanted to wish you a Happy New Year. I'm very excited. This is the first webinar for me this year. Good health and everything in all the good in your endeavors for the year 2025. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and we can dive into credential and credential evaluation at U.S. universities. All right, so again, my name is Thomas Merlot. I'm the director of the International Involvement Center at Northwest Missouri State University. Just a little bit about me is I was actually an international student in the U.S. I'm calling you today from my home country, which I visited for the Christmas break. I'm currently in France, so I'm a French citizen. And just like most of you, I thought the U.S. was a really good destination to pursue my study. And so I've navigated this process. And when Alina reached out to me and said, hey, would you talk about credential evaluation? I was like, this is so interesting because it is going to take me back in time when I was actually looking at, what my options were based on my credential. So jumping into the presentation, the first thing that we're going to talk about is what are credentials, because credential is a big term. So it means a lot of things, but it really means nothing to some people because it's a definition that is not common. So jumping into the definition, the credential is document that state the abilities and experience of a person and show that the person is qualified for a particular job or activity. So example of credential that you can have as a high school student, maybe a graduate student, so master level students, is going to be a degree, a certificate, a diploma, so anything related to academic or educational qualification. Another type of credential can also be occupational qualification. And on there, I put a couple qualification that you can have, but it can be very different based on where you look at it in the world. But it could be CPR training. It can be a Kent administrator certificate. You could also be a programmer. So any kind of certification that are based on what you do outside of what we could call co-curriculum. It could be work experience. It could be a recommendation letter that you've received. It could be an award, a medal, trophies, and it can really be much more when you think about all these things that you're doing on a daily basis. Ultimately, a credential could also be, helping someone cross the sidewalk. It's an achievement that nobody can take away from you. It's your personality. It's what's your trait of character. So again, when you look at credential, just kind of sit down for a minute or maybe close your eyes and say, okay, what did I do or what have I done that, people can't take away from me? It could be a study abroad. Maybe you did a week in a different country as part of a group tour. And all these things are defining who you are as a student and as a global citizen. Those are your credentials. I have credential, Alina has credential, and our credentials are very different. But ultimately, we want our credentials to be different because we're ultimately working in two different fields. Alina working with Education USA, me working for Northwest Missouri State University. So again, it is credentials are meant to create difference in our profiles. So the question is always, why do U.S. universities need my credentials? Well, the way when I was doing my presentation, I was trying to find something that was easy to understand. So when you apply at a U.S. university, you're really just a file on a computer. You fill out an application, and you have people like me or my colleagues at the university reviewing this application, but we don't really know who you are. We just know your name, where you live, your phone number, your email address, maybe where you went to high school, like the name of your high school, but we know nothing else. It's very interesting. So the way I see credential is when you're meeting someone for the very first time, like when you have those easy conversation. Oh, what'd you do in your free time? What did you do this summer? Or, what do you like to do? This is your credential. This is giving us information about who you are as a person, rather than just being a file on a computer. So what do my credentials say about me? Well, it could be an accomplishment that you've done in your studies. It could be a trait of personality. Like I said at the beginning, you could be volunteering at a homeless shelter or at a animal shelter. That shows that you're involved, that you're committed, that you care. But it can also show investment in your future. As I mentioned earlier, you may have traveled to different countries, you may play an instrument, and all this costs money. So you're investing, so that way you're different in your application to university, but in your future in general. And something that is very important to understand is that your credential do not fully define who you are. You are who you are. But credential, when you look at universities, they really focus on a certain period. You've done things all your life. So, those things are very important for you, but don't let them affect you. Like, just embrace what you've done and use them in the best of your abilities. So that way you get the best opportunities. And when we kind of transition into like why the university need that, is because ultimately there are different types of university in the US. The first type of school is going to be very selective, and they might want to know everything about you and why you'd be an asset for their program. Again, when we talk about, I heard Alina said that you're going to have a presentation about ranking. When you look about very high ranked schools, they're going to look for very specific profiles, and these profiles are going to be defined by your credentials. They're going to be defined by your academic levels. They're going to be defined by your extracurriculum, maybe by an instrument that you play, by some of the internship or some of the experience that you have working with companies, or some of the things that you've developed in your free time. So these are going to be the very selective schools. They're going to want to know everything about you. Then you'll have semi-selective schools, which is going to be more like Northwest Missouri State University, the university that I'm representing. And we're going to focus heavily on your academic, but we also want to know, what you like and what you do in your free time, because we do have services on campus that will allow you to continue and to pursue those activities and maybe some of those efforts that you've done. And sometimes they're community-based. So as I mentioned, the working with animals. Well, we do have a shelter that is near the university, and we'd be more than happy to put you in contact with that service so you can continue doing what you like and what you like to pursue in the future. And finally, you're looking more at open enrollment. Those schools, they don't really look at who you are. They're just going to base their decision on what you submit. So it might be just a transcript. They might not know more in depth what you're into. So those are the three different types of schools. Again, in the US, there's a school for everyone. It is important to find your fit whenever you select your school. If you don't do much activities outside of work, outside of the classroom, and you're not really involved, it's completely fine. This is your choice. Nobody should judge your choice. But an open enrollment school might be a little better fit than maybe a selective schools. On the other hand, if you're very active and you do a lot of things and you're an excellent student and you really commit to making a difference, maybe a selective schools might actually be a better option for you, because they might actually be looking for someone like you. So just that way, that kind of breaks down a little bit of the difference between credential and what U.S. universities are looking for. So then the question becomes, how do I submit my credential to U.S. universities? So as I mentioned, it could have been something that you've done in your free time. It could have been but there's ways to actually put that in place. Is the application. So when you apply to universities, there will be many different ways. Some university will have, like Northwest at the very beginning, we have our own application. So when you start the application, you will be able to upload all the documents that you have. And ultimately, if you look at, when you look at the application and the admission process, to be granted admission at a U.S. university, your credentials must meet the admission requirement, not the other way around. So, and that is unless open enrollment, of course. In other words, for example, you have a little bit lower academic profile, but you are very good in music. Well, this is what I'm talking about. The credential is you being very good in music. So you need to find a university that is going to be able to provide you that music support. If you're the other way around. So you have to meet the admission requirements, and not your credential have to be met by the university. So again, there's a lot of play around this. And not being admitted at a university has nothing to do with your personal accomplishment, but slowly because it is just not the right fit for you. I've also put on there Common App, and most of you, I'm sure you will be able to find that resource through Education USA. But Common App is another platform that is available that allows you to apply to multiple schools at once, where a lot of schools are hosted under this platform. But again, two different profile. You've got the schools that have their own application, and you have the Common App on there. So, but ultimately, your credentials are from your home country. So what should you do in a sense of like submitting those credentials? Well, credential evaluation is a different process. It depends on the credential that you're trying to send. The number one credential that you will have to send is the academic qualification. Every school will ask to see some kind of transcript, some kind of grades. They will want to know where you're at academically. So the first thing that you'll have to do under the academic qualification is a translation in English. If you're currently attending an international schools, your school may actually be able to issue you transcript in English. I'm thinking of students that might be attending Cambridge school, or maybe a U.S. curriculum school, maybe Australian curriculum school. There are many American international school. So there are many international schools out there. But if you're attending maybe more of a national school, what we call the national curriculum, the national school system, you will most likely have to take your grades or your transcript to a translator that will be able to translate it in English. Most of the services offer standardized format, so that way it's easy for us when we receive them. The second thing is going to be the grade evaluation. In some countries, they use out of 20, some countries they use out of 10, some countries out of 5. Some countries it's letters. So there's a lot of services out there that offer grade evaluation. So I put 2 on there. So WES, which is probably the most common one in the world, both at the undergraduate level and the graduate level. Ultimately, it is a paid service. You have to pay for the evaluation. But it's not the only one. There's also the NACES, the National Association for Credential Evaluation Services. This is another good resource that you can use. And again, I could have added a C, there, a D, an E. There are many out there. It really depends on what your school that you're applying to is asking. And it is also based on budget. There's expensive one, there's less expensive one. But this is going to be up to the school. For example, at Northwest Missouri State University, we do not ask for a grade evaluation. We have an evaluator on campus. So this is something that we don't ask our students because we can do it on campus. In the academic qualification, sometimes you'll need a syllabus. So a syllabus is a very American term. We use that all the time in higher education, but it is kind of a description of what your class is. It's going to talk about the learning outcomes. It's going to talk about maybe some scheduling, some assignment that you have to do, some of the grading. So that way, whenever you send it to a university, they can actually see more than just the grade. They can see what you've done in the classes and what you learn in the classes. Because sometimes, even though the classes have the same name, it doesn't mean that it's the same content. Another thing is course equivalency. So sometimes, as I was mentioning, you take the same course, but it's not the same thing. So sometimes what we recommend is the two teachers to get in contact or to get an email from the teacher saying, this, I want to know the learning outcome of my class, so that way I can compare it to the learning outcome at a US high school. And that is, again, it might not be possible in every situation, but it is something that you can do for credential evaluation. And finally is an apostille. An apostille it's kind of a seal saying that, this is an official government document. So for example, if you attend the national curriculum and they give you a document, sometimes some schools, they will ask you to have an apostille so that way they know it is an official document, because in America, the system in the school system is designed where high school employees communicate directly with, or high school counselors communicate directly with university admission representatives. So that way there's not really the documents are never handed to the students. It's always handed from one school to the other. In other countries, it doesn't necessarily work like this. In my case, in France, when you take the baccalaureate degree is sent directly to your home. So your parents, the first thing they do is they open the envelope, they look at the grades, they look at your diploma, they're excited. But then whenever you arrive in the US, they say, well, it's not an official document because you've already opened the envelope and it's no longer official. So what I had to do in my case, I had to get an apostille on my diploma so I can certify that it was a government issued document. Again, it doesn't mean that the school that you're planning on attending is going to ask this, but this is another way of evaluating your credential. And I put a little arrow right there. Grade evaluation is also to define what is your GPA. GPA is what's used in U.S. School system. It is called grade point average. Some schools use it at a 4.0, so 4.0. Some schools use it 5.0, but it is ultimately a grading system. So you may have seen it, the A, B, C, D, F. This is what a GPA is. A is 4.0, B is 3.0, C is 2.0, D is 1.0, and F is 0. So that way you have some kind of understanding of the academic qualification and how to evaluate those credentials. Then you have your occupational qualification. So as mentioned, it could be a certificate. It could be something that you've done. Maybe like I was thinking when I was doing the presentation, right now on LinkedIn, you have a lot of occupational qualification. If you're interested in the Microsoft suite, if you're interested in coding, you can do like those LinkedIn classes. This would be an occupational qualification. It is ultimately something that you've done on your own. So these can be translated in English. At the beginning, I used CPR training. CPR is whenever someone, you have to do the mouth-to-mouth or you have to do CPR. Again, this is a very much US certification. In your country, you might have a training that's done by your fireman, by maybe the EMT, or the medical services, but it doesn't mean that it's recognized in the US. So what you have to do is that there's a platform that can help you understand if it is the same in different countries. Then again, an apostille, if you receive a certificate from a fire station in your own country or medical team, you can take it to an attorney or a notary service and they'll be able to put an apostille. If it's something that is from LinkedIn or if it's something that's from a private platform, you will not be able to get an apostille because it is not a government-issued certificate. And after that is relevance. If you've received something for your city or because it's all about how you present yourself to the university. So if you hope to do something in business, but you've done something in another field, or again, it is all about relevance of the qualification. Or if it's something because you want an eating contest, it might not be relevant in terms of the application. It is good, it's fun, you receive a certificate, but it's not relevant to to the application at a university. Then the letter of recommendation. The only credential evaluation that is available for a letter of recommendation is a translation in English. And this is something that can be done at a translator office nearby, or you can also find some online. They offer translation services online. And then finally is your professional experience. Well, your professional experience is very much a resume, a CV, letter of employment. So maybe a contract saying, maybe your job description, what you are doing. Where I am in France, that you have to sign a letter of employment prior to joining the company. So that way you also have a way of tracking what you do. If your letter of employment is in your native language, that letter will have to be translated in English, so that way you can prove your duties and what you were asked to do. If you don't have a letter of employment, you can ask for a letter from your employer. If your employer has the ability to speak English, this is great. You can ask him to do a letter in English. That would count. But if your employer writes you a letter saying that John Doe was employed at company A from this time to this time, his position or her position was software engineer, and this is it. There's no description of what you are doing. Again, this letter is only going to prove what you wrote on your resume. So again, if you have this conversation with your employer, make sure they really explain what you're doing in that company, because it can actually help you in your college application, in your university application. And then on there, I put statement of purpose, because even though statement of purpose in the US are mostly used for application to university, it is also good to kind of reflect on what you are doing at this company. Maybe this is a project that you work on, the outcome of that project. And even though it might actually be on your CV, it's always good to reflect on what you've done in your professional experience. And that can be done with a statement of purpose. And this is another tool that you can use to prove your professional experience or your accomplishment within the company. All right. So again, the credential is not something that it's not designed to impress other. It's really about yourself. Your credential is a representation of yourself. It's a set of tools that you have, and that can help you make decision, that can help you create opportunity. But it's also, it gives you a voice. Whenever I always talk about, interviews, like job interviews or maybe college interviews, or you shouldn't be scared, because they're only going to ask you question about your credentials. They might ask you a question about, why you're applying to the university, but ultimately, this is a conversation that you've had in the past. You've talked to your parents, you've talked to your friends, you've talked to your family, you've talked to your teachers. So you know why you've applied to this family. You've researched about this university. But when they ask you a question about your credentials, this is your pride and your pride position. You have done all of it. So whenever this is something where you should build your confidence, when they ask you a question about a humanitarian mission that you've done in Africa, they should feel your passion. They should feel your experience. It should really open doors and not close them. And ultimately, your credential, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's only a punctual time of your life. It should never be, I'm done. I've accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. I have my credential. I can move forward. For me, right now, I re-enrolled in school after 10 years of not attending schools. I decided to move forward and continue my education, because what I had before was not enough, and they're just stepping stone. You want to continue. You want to do better. You want to be better, and ultimately the credentials are going to change. Right now, there may be voluntary work. It might be helping. But as you progress, you have opportunity to have professional experience, or you might be able to be involved in organization, and you might be able to present, and you might be, all this is credentials. And those credentials, they're going to help you build your character, your personality, your resilience, your ego. It might be able to, it's really going to define your true worth, who you are. So when you think about credential and you talk about your credential, and don't let anybody, take it away from you. Your credential is what you've done. And whether it is exceptional or whether it is average, you can't go back and change those credentials. You can only move forward and build new credentials. I always use myself as an example. I was not very good in high school. I was not a very good student. I'm not saying I was not a very good student in a sense of like I wasn't smart. I'm just saying I wasn't really passionate about schools. So when it came time for me to apply for university, my credentials weren't really a reflection of who I was, because my teacher said, could have more efforts in the classroom, or could do more, or talks with his friends in the classroom. So when I sent those documents to the university, I was almost ashamed, because I said, you're going to judge me on a piece of paper, my credential, but this is not who I am. I'm a passionate person, and I only like to do what I like to do. So again, don't let it define you. If you don't get accepted to the university because they don't see something they're looking for, it's okay. As a not so good student, I was still able to find a university in the US that accepted me. I was still able to get my bachelor's degree. I was still able to get my master's degree, and I was still able to get now work toward my doctorate degree. So, but again, I was not good in high school, and now as I look back, I am proud of not being good in high school, because that created different traits of character that my friend didn't have. Resilience. So definitely, when you think about credential, don't stress too much about it. This is who you are, but it is something that you're working toward. If you're hoping to achieve high goals, give yourself plenty of opportunity to set high credentials. If you, just like me, if you're a passionate person, I was passionate, I like sports, I like all these things, those were my credential. And I needed to find a school that accepted my credential and accepted me for who I was. So definitely keep that in mind as you think about your credentials. So when do my credential get me at Northwest? It's good to have credential. We talk about credential and all those beautiful things that you have and the amazing thing that you've done, but what does that get you? And right now I'm using Northwest as an example. Other universities will have different opportunities for you. So at Northwest, your credential don't only grant you admission, but they grant you scholarship. We've built our scholarship model on credentials. And the number one credential that we base ourselves on is academic merit. So what do you need to have scholarships at Northwest? You need to have a minimum of 2.75 GPA. That is one of the requirements that we have based on your credential. So as I mentioned, academic merit-based scholarship for undergraduate studies. We don't have any additional application for scholarships. Once you apply for the university, you will send us your grades. We will evaluate them. We will need the translation, of course, as mentioned. We will need the English translation of your grades, but we will evaluate it. We'll evaluate your grades at Northwest, and we'll be able to give you a scholarship as long as you meet the 2.75 GPA. If you do not meet the 2.75 GPA, again, it's okay. This is your credential. You can still be accepted. You just don't qualify for scholarship. And additionally, they are granted at the same time as admission. If you have an SAT score, this is a credential. You've taken the test, you've paid for the test, you've committed to the test. It is not required for admission, but we do offer some scholarship in relation to your GPA and your SAT score. Again, as we look for credential, we also offer scholarship for fine arts. So if you play an instrument, you sing, you play an instrument, or you're interested in theater, we offer scholarship for fine art students. For graduate studies, based on your credentials, we will waive the GRE. And to waive the GREs, we will base ourselves on grades and or professional experience. So this is something that you need to look as well when you seek your admission, when you look for the university, is what do my credentials get me? Don't only look at the admission, because the admission ultimately at this point, if you're applying to the university, you know you're going to be admitted. Just look at what it gets you on top of the admission. When we look at credential, we also look for us at Northwest on the personal growth. Academic growth is one thing. We will teach you. You will learn a lot at Northwest in the classroom, outside the classroom. But we also want you to become what we call a bearcat. We want you to embrace the Northwest culture, and that comes through personal growth. And this is why we've designed about 175 club and organization, from athletic, academic, organizational, so you can find a sense of belonging. So I put a little video here, and this is just me playing with the screen, but we have on our website just something so you can be involved. And so if you're interested in music and math and in kind of diverse organization, you'll be able to join that on campus. You can also search based on your experience. So if you're interested more in career, in leadership, in health, in justice, and equity, you will be able to join those club and organization. You'll also, I apologize for the. You'll also be able to see what's happening on our campus in terms of experience. So, for example, if you're interested in a leadership experience, we do have some certificates available that you can join. And those are all free and available to students as part of the attending Northwest. Apologize, there's a little glitch in the system, but you can follow us on social media. So each page has their own social media page. If we don't have a club, you can also create it. We do have a strong support for international students. We have our own international students organization. Right now we have 54 members. On the page, you can actually find the contact information for the members, so that way you can reach out to them if you have any questions. And again, as we look at students organization, you'll see there's a lot of academics, so Accounting Society. You also have Advocate for Animal Awareness. So everything that I've talked about throughout the presentation is something that you will be able to do at Northwest and pursue your passion and build new credentials. Okay, so this is all I have. I'm gonna leave this page right here for just a second. So again, my name was Thomas Merlo. I've put my email address. I'll put it again in the chat so you can have it. This is the Northwest Missouri State University website. And I also put the link to apply today if this is something that you're interested in knowing more. I will be your direct point of contact throughout the entire process. So this is always good to know who you're talking to. But I hope this was helpful in a sense of understanding what credential was and how to navigate your credential in the application process. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second so you have my camera, and that way I can also see the chat. I am going to put all this information in the chat as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Thomas. I really appreciate. And I think it's really interesting how you've put the credential, because normally, our students would consider it like as a bit an academical kind of expression. So I mean the credential evaluation itself, because when they would hear us, when they would be asked from a university to do that, they would be like really scared. They would be like, what is that? If you can just give us some more details on this. So considering this fact, and you already mentioned that in the presentation, who is doing the credential evaluation, I would just like to stop specifically on the cases when you would ask specifically for the credential evaluation. So what would be the most often cases, or how in what cases specifically you would ask for the credential evaluation? So we know that many students would ask to kind of verify their courses, and you already mentioned this, but if you can just give it as an example for an undergraduate and a graduate student. So for example, if they would be asked for a credential evaluation from your university, for what that would be exactly?
So for us at Northwest, what we will ask a credential evaluation for is only for the transcript. This only for grades. So we will need just the English translation, and then we will do the evaluation in-house. We don't ask the students to go and find a provider or pay for a evaluation service. Everything is done in-house. And this is for both undergraduate and graduate students.
That
For
is
the
awesome.
grad-
And even for the transfer student, as I understand, because they would have a different case. They would have just to also do an equivalence of the courses and to demonstrate that.
Yeah, so for the transfer students, what we do is, so if they're a transfer students, maybe already attending a university in the US, they've already entered the US system. So we will just need their grades, and then we will be able to match maybe with the form that you've mentioned, the course equivalency, so that way the credits can transfer. If they start the university in their home country, we might need some additional documents to make sure we understand exactly what we call the learning outcomes of the class. Because as I mentioned, sometimes the classes are very similar. I'm going to take, for example, history. You can take history in one country and history in the other, and the name of the course is the same. But in one country, you will learn one country's history, and in the other, you will learn the other country's history. So ultimately, the learning outcome is not the same, but the class is designed for you to learn about history. So I think this is kind of why we have that need for the either the syllabus, what we call the syllabus, the course description, or the course
curriculum kind of, or the curriculum.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much. That explains a lot. Also, also another thing that I would like also to highlight on the credential evaluation. You already said that you are doing that in-house. What about the prices for the credential evaluation? Are they different? Is there a standard price? Because the students would sometimes also get, scared about this. Is that a standardized price, like for the standardized test, or does that differ from the company that you are choosing for the credential evaluation?
Yeah, it very much differs from the company that you use. Wes, and again, I'm not here to make any publicity for any company.
Right.
There is no financial benefit for me or for Northwest to advertise for this company. But Wes has really made its name in that platform, in that space. But it's very expensive. I think it is different between undergraduate students and graduate students, because evaluating a undergraduate degree is a lot of classes. So if I'm not mistaken, a West evaluation for graduate students can go up to $400, when an undergraduate evaluation is around $200. Between 75 to 200 based on the services. And that's very much the rainbow in terms of different services. But usually I tell undergraduate students, if you're applying to a university that requires you to have an evaluation of transcript done by a third party, it's going to be between $50 to $200. For graduate students, between $175 to $500 based on your academic profile.
Thank you so much for the details. That also explains a lot, because the students would also get confused because they wouldn't consider those costs when they would do their applications, and sometimes you would be asked for that. So you guys in the research process, you should also evaluate this option in case if you will be asked for the credential evaluation.
If you don't mind adding, because we do ask the English translation of the transcript. And when you look for a translator in English, if you need to translate your documents in English, which is part of the credential evaluation, make sure you find someone that's not going to translate word by word. We don't need to know every word on your transcript. We don't need to know the address of your school. We just need to know the grades, the classes that you took. And if you look online, there's standardized formats that they can use for English translation for transcript. So make sure, and again, I'm not saying, don't be scammed, but be very smart. You will need every dollar possible when you go study in the US. Be very conscious of how much money you spend on those services. I'm very cheap when it comes to the services, so I always find the best option and the best price, in a sense of I don't need everything on that transcript. We don't really need for at least at Northwest, we don't need to know what the teacher said about your grade. We just need the grade and the classes that you took.
And as I assume, and we have seen that in a lot of cases, the credential evaluation were mostly asked for the students who've, for example, finished their bachelor degree in one major, and they would just go for another major for their postgraduate degree. Or, for example, they would be a transfer student. For them, it's really struggling because they would have to ask the transcript from the university or from the institution, and then they would just have to do a credential evaluation because maybe some courses wouldn't be the same, or or the new university that you are applying for, they would just need to know more information on the curriculum that you've did specifically at that university. And we can see that for the students which would do, for example, which will finish nowadays their bachelor degree, they wouldn't need to do specifically the credential evaluation because everything is kind of done into the format that is requested from the universities. So I think the students who are applying not in their freshman year, it's going to be maybe sometimes more difficult specifically for them. Am I right or not? If you can just correct me here.
Yeah, very, very much so. Very much so. Yeah, do what you're asked to do. Don't overdo the process. It's already a lengthy process in some cases, so make sure you're efficient, money-wise, but also time-wise, because it can be very timely as well. And I wanted to add that some of the graduate students that might be on the video right now, they might need a little bit more, because graduate studies, sometimes students, after their undergraduate studies, they decided to go to work, or and sometimes, so we do see a lot of difference in academic profile, which is not bad. Don't think that because you stopped the university and you decided to go to the workplace, you're no longer a good candidate. You're just as good. Now you have professional experience, and universities are looking for this. For us at Northwest, we are thriving for professional experience, because ultimately when we have you in the classroom, you bring a completely different perspective, a more practical perspective, and we can really use your professional experience to help the one that have not had the professional experience. So again, that's going to be a different credential. You might need to have some translation, you might need to have a CV, you might need to have some of that, but graduate students, it is very important. Don't discourage yourself because you have a unique academic profile. It is actually an asset for U.S. University.
Thank you so much for adding it. Even though for those who are on their undergraduate degree and they, for example, finish their bachelor degree and they would like to take another bachelor degree from an institution in the United States, and they would have to take a gap year or 2 gap years, that's also not the situation when you have to be desperate about that and you have to to be down on that. So yeah, for sure you will have a situation when you will be accepted. We have a lot of students that intended to apply a lot of times and they finally got accepted. So yes, sometimes this is even a plus. Okay, thank you so much, Thomas. I really appreciate. Thank you so much, guys, for being today with us. In case if you will have additional questions after we finish with this video, please submit them in the chat, or you can email us. You have our email address on our website, and in case if you will be interested, we can also put you in touch with Thomas for additional questions. Thomas, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your presentation. Thank you so much for the useful information that we've got today. For everyone else that have been today with us, thank you very much for joining us. I wish you still happy holidays, because some of us are still celebrating, and I wish you a happy new year and a good and a fresh start. And please stay tuned, watch our videos, inform yourself, and ask the questions. Please submit them in advance. We'll do our best to provide one of the best topics, best answers, and best speakers, like today, for example. Thank you once again, Thomas. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.